Can't give in to peer pressure, then blame peer pressure. And that's that.
Is that technically true?
I don't know. You said it.
I know. When did I say it? Like,
we were playing the game Valheim. You and I think Kestis gave in to peer pressure somehow in the game.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember.
And there we are. There we are.
I was about to say, surely I said it in a. I'm pretty sure I said it, but I said it in a context which wasn't real life. It was in Minecraft. It's fine. Also, Valheim. I still don't know why you say Valheim. Apart from just because you know it's not Valheim.
I don't know. Like, I'm gonna guess that one of these days a Nordic person is gonna be like, actually pronouncing it right for everyone. Pronounce it wrong. But no, it's not that.
It's actually Valheim the entire time.
Yeah, because I've played God of War. There's similar words, including that same name, and it's pronounced. Yeah.
Oh, that is true. Actually, yeah. I don't remember how it is pronounced in God of War, but if it is, then that's No, there's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, so it's very much pronounced the way you say it and the way it's supposed to be said. Valheim, but who knows? Maybe that like poster from Fargo where the fish is going in the other direction, and then all the other fish. Maybe that's me in this one moment here,
or the vice versa. You never know.
Yeah.
Either way, someone's causing a mess for the others.
Yeah. Welcome to Silly Wells. It's a mental health podcast. I'm so close to saying brought to you by Manscaped. Oh,
stop! You're manifesting far too hard.
I am. It's the only thing I want. Thing is, like, they've been good because my previous YouTube channel was sponsored by them, so they actually have been sending things out. I just don't get paid, so they give me free stuff. I'm happy. I'll take that for life. Welcome to Silly Wells. It's a mental health podcast, and we talk about things that you might not want to hear, and that's okay. This podcast is for everyone, but it might not be for you. I personally think that we're going to discuss a lot of sad things, a lot of depressive things, you know? And I think if you're not in the mood for that, which is A-okay, A-okay, it's okay to turn on another podcast, to turn on a good song. Maybe you don't have to listen to us, but if you fancy listening to sad boys discuss sad boy stuff, then you can stay.
Listen to us while you're meditating. I'm sure that'll help you feel better.
Well, we need to make an audiobook now, you know.
Oh wait, could we do like a headspace where it's just me and you doing like a meditation walkthrough?
Breathe. You cunt.
Just
Find your center if you can be bothered.
Find your center. I can't.
Yeah.
But have a look for it.
Yeah. You know, I think Bush did 9/11. Breathe.
Breathe. I'm going to let you hang for this one. Like, I'm just going to let you hang on these things now. I'm not even going to try, like, get in the way. I want everything you say to sound as sincere as possible, because I will not say anything about it. I've decided that's how it's going to work now.
What, for anything?
Everything. Like, everything where I know you're not being sincere, I'm just going to act as if it is.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, there'll be a compilation of, like, you know, all the sus things I've said in the show. And I guarantee your one will probably be longer than mine. I'm going to say it now. I feel like...
Oh, but mine's going to be real. The one I have is going to be real. The one I have is going to be real. The ones you have are going to be ludicrous and very not true.
Do you remember the clip of, like, Linus Tech Tips discussing the hard R?
No. I'm not going to lie to you, no.
Cool. So, Linus was like, honest, I think it was Linus or someone who with him or whatever, was like, oh, I can't say it. Like, the hard R. And, like, so I can't actually say the word. And everyone's really confused. Because, like, it has no context at all to what they were discussing before. And he was like, yeah, I can't, like, he was like, pretty, like, you know, I'm not going to say the word, guys. Turns out he meant retarded. But he describes it as the hard R. So it got everyone like on their toes, waiting to be like, "What are you trying to do here?" But he just meant that, and I was like, "Oh, that's all." I felt like he had to have been doing it on purpose,
But
but he wasn't.
I thought that was for some. That is a hard R for some people, isn't it? Am I wrong?
No,
I genuinely don't have another thought of what that could be in my head. Like,
no, like because you say a word with like with nigger, but you say it with a
yeah.
hard R, right? So he clearly thought that.
Oh, I get what you mean.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, sorry. I like some people say like there's the like there's like the F word, but then there's the hard F word or like the
Yeah,
bad F word. That's what I
yeah.
thought
So
he meant.
So, so everybody thought he meant like that, the racial
Right.
slur, and it was like, why? But no, he just meant that.
Yeah, he meant that. He meant how I thought he meant it, which was like because it's at the beginning of the word. It's the hard R's and it's a hard word. I get you though. I now I understand. Now I understand it from the other word and the use of the hard R there. That
Yeah.
now it makes sense. That's
Maybe
hilarious.
it was me. Maybe it was me describing it badly, but
I don't know. Like that sounds like that's how he described it, and there was just confusion across the board because it's a black and blue and white and gold situation. Like you just get what you want from it. Like.
But yeah. Am I missing anything from the usual things we said in the beginning of the show? I don't think I am. No, I think I just covered it.
No,
fairly
I think we're
smoothly.
good now. Yeah. Do you want to? Shall I start? Or should you start? Should we go?
I'm gonna start. Football's back. Premier League is back.
Right.
Yeah, like it's good. It's good. Like Arsenal won their first game. They beat Wolverhampton Wolverers. Wolverers. Jesus Christ.
Wolverers, yeah.
Yeah. I can't even speak English anymore. Anyway, we beat Wolverhampton 2-0. It was a really fun game to watch. There's a peacefulness in being able to sit down with food and watch a game of football. I've been able to do that like 3 or 4 times this week. So it's felt good. Felt really, really good. Everything's shit aside from that. But the key thing we take away from this is football's back. Arsenal winning 2-0. And it was really good to see like familiar faces back in the Premier League, okay? If you're not a football fan, just try and hop along for the ride, okay? 38-year-old Jamie Vardy, he's like he had the whole story, he came from non-league football when he was like 24 years old, worked his way up the league, prolific goal scorer, ends up like in the Premier League and winning the Premier League with Leicester City. And Leicester City, for people who don't know anything about football, were like predicted to be relegated that season. They won the league instead. And he was like the main guy. And he was like a world-class striker for like the best part of 5 years in the Premier League. Jesus Christ. He gets relegated with Leicester. He's like 36, 37. He's like, yep, he's probably going to retire next season. He ends up scoring like damn near 20 goals in the championship. Gets him promoted back up as champions. And then scores in the first game of the season to equalise against Tottenham at 38 years old. He has not lost his pace. He's an absolute shithouse of a human being as well. He loves a Red Bull and vodka. Like, it's just a perfect story. Okay?
Why do you know that? Why?
Because he says it. Like, that's how he used to get himself ready for games. Like, he's such a, like, if anyone, do you know how people say, oh, I'm like a common man? Like how Nigel Farage fucking lies about this shit, right?
Sure,
No.
yeah.
If Jamie Vardy, like, runs as a politician, he'd be more sincere than any politician alive. Because he would be like, yep, here's my Red Bull. Like, ready to go. Like, it's there, His wife, maybe not as much, but him, he's good and sincere.
Wow, contra. But what is the social media like for footballers? Because that's not something I'm kind of like. Sometimes when if I was watching YouTube, I would get an ad where they've had like this is like a part of an interview or something with some sports people. But apart from that, like I don't know what the general malaise of social media is like with sports stars of the UK football kind specifically, because I think that's what
How do you mean? Like how they interact with social media? How
kind of more like the presence of them, like the media like focus on them, I guess, in a way, because and what they attempt to put out, like how what I mean, like what kind of vibes are we getting, and what's the level of media in it?
It depends on the football. Like with the world superstars like Ronaldo and Messi, things are very heavily curated. Like Ronaldo's whole branding done by social media is one of the most followed, if not the most followed person on a few social media platforms. So he's like heavily curated. Everything's pristine. Same with Messi as well. Like you don't really get messy videos. Other footballers are very professional of how they do it. They're like a team to like put out only specific information. Like, hey guys, I'm playing in this game. Other footballers they control it themselves, and you can tell because they pick like videos of the dog and they post it, or like, videos of them hanging out with another teammate and they post. And there's others who literally just have fun with it. And like Neil Maupay, who I think I mentioned a few episodes back, actually, the captain shithouse of the Premier League. He's now been demoted to Lance Corporal shithouse because Jamie Vardy's back. He has fun in social media, like has digs at players, makes jokes about himself. He has fun with it. Other players do. But I think the key for these players is that they don't interact with it in the receiving sense all that much. So they know when to like put their phone down. They know when to, most of them anyway, know how to like leave a conversation. Like if they reply back to fans, it's something that will shut the fan up for the rest of the year. Like it's like it'll be like, oh, this football fan says, my team is rubbish. Well, here's me scoring against your team a week later. Ha 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 ha. Like things like that. But that's a dime in a dozen because they know how they have to put the phone down because like it's a really stressful life because you have millions of people hoping that you succeed and hoping that you fail every single day. So
yeah, I feel like their general, like their day-to-day actually requires them to not be on their phone quite often. So compared to most people, they probably actually get quite a decent amount of healthy time away from their phone.
Yeah, they do. Because like, especially because you are a brand if you want to be a brand, like as a sports. Yeah. So like, you might be towards the tail end of your career and you're more thinking about just staying in football. But there's guys who are thinking about becoming a brand. So they're working and trying to get on TV shows and be a pundit there or be an analyst here. Or like if they could like, create something using social media, like a few footballers have clothing brands or have their own podcast now. John Obi Mikel, who played for Chelsea, has a podcast. Like a lot of these guys are on Talk Sport, spouting absolute rubbish. But
I think there are too many podcasts.
I think we need to do a Hunger Game of podcasts, and I think that like the last million podcasts win.
We know how quick we die so early. We die so early. You think not? You think we go the distance?
If all the podcast hosts in like ever are there, you think that we're gonna be the ones to go first?
Oh no! Well, okay. Like there's so many that like if you get rid of half of all podcast things, I feel like we're just gonna get like random luck of the draw. We're dead.
So as of 2024, there's over 5 million podcasts available worldwide. With more than 70 million episodes between them. Now, this is what I'm going to say, okay? If you take 5 million podcasts, okay, and you say, hey, all the hosts of the podcast, you're all going to fight. And it doesn't have to be both of you. It can be one of you, but it has to be one of you. So let's say that like the Rooster Teeth podcast is still going on. They have to choose 6 core people, okay? And that's going to be the Rooster Teeth team.
Okay.
Me and you are there, and like Joe Rogan is there as well. I think we make it to the last 2 million.
Okay. You think we're top 40%?
Yeah. I personally, I think we're going to push it to like the last million. Why? Straight away, I'm running head first. I'm not going to play defensive. Neither are you, okay? This is what's going to happen. All right? We're going to get stationed with like philosophy podcasts or like near wrestling podcasts, okay? Okay.
Wait, do we get like situated by genre? Like, so we're near the mental health podcast area.
But we're also like a few minutes walk away where politics is. So like we're gonna just roll up to Ben Shapiro, deck him first, but make sure everyone else sees us do it. So then like Trevor Noah's podcast, they go, hey, We like these guys.
Yeah.
You know.
I would ally with Trevor Noah so quickly.
Jordan Klepper goes, yep, cool. He's cool. You know, all of the like left-leaning podcasts can be on our side. Cool. Straight away, we just make friends. They just took out Ben Shapiro. Like, straight away. And we take out Matt Walsh. We take out Jordan Peterson. These guys are crazy. And then we just look at Rogan and we just nod at him. As he goes one way, we go the other. You know?
It is occurring to me now that the actual podcast selection after this is going to be fucking awful if you think about it. It's going to be a lot of meatheads, and it's going to be it's going to be a lot of people willing to just do dirty, which is like.
I'll tell you this right here, right now. Who's going to win it? And
okay.
People would disagree. But if you're going to sit there and tell me that Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart are winning the whole thing.
I knew you were going to mention them. I knew you were going to say them.
You know what's going to happen? They're going to be like, yo, Silly Wales, you can survive and work with us. And they're going to say that to 15 million podcasts. All of them. And they'll be like, we win without even fighting. But if you wanted to, we can kill them all.
What happens? Okay, I'm not going to get down to it. But
okay. I will sell out if they go, you can be on the cabinet of podcasts. Like, we need 1 million good podcasts still left, and you can be one of the 1 million. Or we'll get, everyone here to kill you.
You trying to say we're forming a podcast government? And we need... Okay, right. So there's how many seats? 50,000 seats? 5,000 seats?
I think they will look to collect the best 1 million podcasts and let everyone else die.
Oh, 1 million. Okay. We're cutting it by 80%.
Yeah, I think that they go, look, we have a plan to just let everybody else die. We want the best 1 million. And I think that we are charming enough, and they've heard us. They heard what we did to Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson on them lot. Okay? They were like, yeah, we need these guys in. That's how we make it to the 1 million.
Well, if anyone agrees with what we're saying, make sure you donate to us and get us sent packages while we're in the Hunger Games. That's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Just, sponsor us. That's it. Sponsor us, and then we'll survive the Hunger Games podcast.
They're gonna say things like, Jocko Willink will win. No, he won't. He won't win because everyone will know Jocko Willink is the guy that is probably going to win. So they'll just rock up to him and be like, yeah, we have to take you out, man. No hard feelings. Bang.
Who the fuck is Jocko Willink? What is this?
He's a former Navy SEAL and has the Willink podcast. He's one of them guys.
Oh, okay.
Similar to David Goggins, I think, and how he is. I don't think David Goggins has an actual podcast. If David Goggins had a podcast, I think similar thing with him though. I think he gets taken out fairly quick. Because everyone will look at him and go, yeah.
Wouldn't he just outrun the majority of people? Wouldn't he just never, I don't think people would catch up to him is the problem.
That's true. That is true.
But yeah, I'm actually surprised David Goggins has another podcast. Anyway, we're getting so off track, completely off track. But
no, this is very on track here.
Okay.
Yeah, Andrew Huberman's dying pretty quickly too, isn't he? He has all the information. Kidnap. Kidnap until we have no use for him. All of the big podcasts might die really quickly.
Oh, I can believe a lot of them will. Yeah. Most of the ones I listen to will die very quickly.
What? Why? Because they're just not.
I just know their general health and demeanor. I think, to be fair, I think some of them might be able to. What would you call it? Metagame it well enough that they could probably get past a little bit, but I don't know if they'll survive to the end. I think it might get too brutal, and some of their legs will just give out.
Yeah, I'm looking for my podcast now, and I personally think that the big podcast what will survive will be Bill Burr. That's me.
Okay, yeah.
I think he survived. I think Justin and Roosevelt Vanity Project. I think they will all survive as well.
Can you tell that Alex is really into podcasts, by the way?
I am. I do not think, though, I'll tell you this right now. I don't think. I think Blind Boy will actually survive as well. I think he might actually win the whole thing. He'll just sneak away. But for some reason, something tells me that, Fabrizio Romano here isn't going to survive. I don't think the Football Ramble is going to survive either. I think that they'll, for similar reasons that you gave regarding your podcast, which I imagine are more D&D based, or things along those lines.
Actually, it wasn't the D&D ones I was thinking of, but now I'm thinking of the D&D stuff, and I mean, some of them are all right, but some of them aren't. But there's quite a lot of them. There's quite a lot in a group, so that does help a lot.
Yeah.
If you choose the best ones, especially from it, then got a 6'4" guy.
I think we need to do like a tier list of podcasts, but we pick like the top 100 and then see
That's
who
so
wins.
broad. That's so subjective. I mean, that's tier lists, I guess, but still.
No, but it's the top 100 from like from Apple's like rankings or whatever.
I get. Yeah. I get you. Like we just go through the top 100 and decide. But I don't know fucking any of them. That's the thing. You will know most of them, I imagine, but I'm not going to know majority of them.
Yeah. If they're done by a comedian, I've probably heard of it. I'll listen to it enough to know the general gist of it, so I can never listen
I might
to it
know. I probably know one, but I'll possibly know two. Like that's literally the limit.
Okay. But,
anyway, this is called procrastination, by the way, where we're nervous about podcasting. We're nervous about getting around to talking about something, so we're just deflecting. So yeah, did you any more or?
No, I just like it's just more of a like we tick over, we go again, and I'm looking forward to like just actually I'm not looking forward to anything. Who am I kidding? Yeah, I'm just like time is passing. Yeah,
I feel like I don't ask you enough, like because you said like you slipped in like the rest of the week wasn't good, but I didn't. And sometimes I can get away with you not saying it, but I almost want to know if for everything that you're willing to talk about, like
it's just like when you deal with depression, things aren't always great, and there's not many like positive outlooks or outlets or things like that as well. So like little things happening can build up and cause an effect. So like it could be something as simple as like you're playing football, but you barely touch the ball, and like even though your contribution was equal, you don't feel like you were involved, or like things like awkward social situations and things like that. Like a lot of those things build up, and I think they hold firmer, they hold and last longer for me than they would maybe somebody else. It's not like I have a vengeful feeling or like anything like that. It's just more like, oh, this is a sad moment. I'm going to keep that sad moment rather than completely moving on from it. So then by the end of the week, your back hurts because you're carrying loads of like somewhat negative feelings or ideas.
Yeah.
And you never really deal with them because, again, they hold longer than normal.
Oh yeah, no, the burden's real. It's just I notice obviously that when with the way that we talk about our stuff, I tend to talk more abstractly about my experiences, but you don't tend to do so as much. So I was merely kind of, I guess I'm trying to like needle in on the idea that like what your actual experience of the things that you describe like just then as being, because you describe obviously that you feel like you don't feel great, but not the personal feeling of what that feels like, I suppose. Like, whereas I go into a tirade about the fucking emotional fucking like roller coaster it is and what that feels like internally and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I think that
trying to provide balance.
yeah. I think it's just for me. It's one of those things where how do I feel, and how can I like develop with those feelings in a way, because I know that they'll stay. So I know that like the feeling of like sadness I'll have will stay for like a few days or so. So okay, cool. Nothing I can really do about it, and I think sadly it's not something that is like worth exploring because it's just a feeling of sadness. There's nothing in and around it, but like the cause of it, for example, if like the cause of it is just like a weird social interaction, it's not that interaction caused it, but that interaction reminded me of why I feel a certain way. So it's like, I want to forget the interaction, but I also want to forget about why I feel a certain way as well. It's a lot.
So is it partly because you also don't want to actively talk about it at all? Like, just in a general sense?
Because it'll be like things like, the stalker stuff. And like, we kind of crushed that on the first episode, I think. And it's like, I'm kind of bored of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been quoted multiple times. A bored me is dangerous for anyone who I'm happen to be like against. And it's not like I go after them, it's more the retaliation feeling of it. But there's no one to really go after in this. respect. So what happens is a board me gets like combative with myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I retaliate against myself. Like I do something good, no, it's rubbish, it's shit, stop it, things like that. So yeah, so discussing it kind of feels like I'm just, I don't know, getting into a combat situation with myself.
Yeah. So yeah, it's always a weird thing for me because I just feel like I want to make sure that you're aware. Like, I think I understand internally that you're aware that you can. That I think. Well, sorry. Let me be clear. I think you. I believe that you trust you could tell me things, and you don't have any like predilection about telling me things specifically. Obviously, we're recording right now, but I'm thinking about it from that perspective, just simply that dynamic. And then but there are things where it's like I don't want to talk about it because it doesn't help me to talk about it at all. Like it doesn't help me to analyze it in that way, or it doesn't help me to analyze it in just by discussing it with you or by discussing it in the podcast element, right? And that obviously is very different with me because I have essentially always been a person who will discuss openly everything with everyone, literally having to just only self-censor myself on this podcast in terms of not doxing people or like, and things like that, and not giving away information I'd rather not be shared. But that's
Yeah,
me. That's got nothing to do with like the actual internal strife or discussing the actual things I'm dealing with or whatever. That's a whole like that thing I've never had any issue just spilling out into the world. Maybe that's privilege, I don't know. But it's definitely like a thing I've always been actually quite good at doing. Like even loads of the people I've had as like therapists or whatever have been, have always been like, oh, it's you're surprisingly open. Like they find it odd, they find me odd in that way that I just say things and that they don't have to coax anything out of me because I essentially know what they're looking for and I just go, okay, and then I just pull out like a big box and then I'm just like like it's way heavier than you expect it. Sorry if I hit the table
yeah,
there. And then it's just um like and it's like so much heavier and then I'm just like, okay, let me just grab some shit and show you. And there'll be things at the bottom of it that I'm not showing, maybe that I'm less likely to show, but it's stuff that I'm pulling out enough that they don't need to see all of that. Like they don't need to see the bottom. So I just wanted to kind of emphasize this, not even to the podcast, but I guess in a kind of in a situation like this, that I'm I would like to know how you truly feel about certain things, but I have no intention of like making you do that. It's but my interest is both out of, I guess technically a curiosity, but there's also a sense of me thinking if this would help you to speak about these topics in this way,
yeah.
then
Like I think it's,
pop
I
off,
think it's, yeah. Like I think it depends on how you view like the like the idea of like as you say popping off. I think if you go through the episodes, I think there's like we're on 20. I think is this episode 24. Is this my number?
I will double check that, but please keep going.
Yeah, like there's always like a good 2 minute rant about something fairly innocuous. Uh, I think ADHD, irascible, prone to outburst. Like that is that that is the popping off really because it's like there's a very like simple thing, like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll happily go off on those because they're very mundane and they have no like bearing. The episode Diplomatic, which is 2 episodes ago, I think really does
Yes.
demonstrate how I deal with things in a certain way. Because that is I think I gave multiple scenarios of how like I was like, dealing with a situation without being like vengeful about it, but also getting it off my chest in a way that is productive. So when I'm ranting about something, like something as simple as like I think I've discussed like people walking slowly before and did like a 4.5 minute set at the Comedy Works in like Atlanta, whatever. like it's just more like that's probably a discussion of more deeper things surrounding it. But I find it easier to channel it into a very mundane annoyance and pet peeve rather than these are all the reasons why like I am angry at this person walking slowly.
Yeah, you were correct, by the way. This is going to be 24. I guess there's a part of me that's thinking about this now, having realized that I don't. Is that there's a part of me that's like, okay, I don't want to turn the camera of the podcast on. That's not what I'm trying to do, but I also don't want to be the person that feels like the podcast is being like, I don't want to feel like I'm the where the camera's being pointed all the time, like because of the way in which I explain things or extrapolate on things versus the way that you do, because we do it in very different ways. So like when I'm asking you questions, like I don't want to be like, now I've turned it on you, start talking. Like I don't want to like start acting, baby. Like I'm not trying to like
We're gonna die
force
in the
that.
Hunger Games.
Yeah, like I'm not trying to like kind of make that happen,
Nah.
and that's very much my point. But there was a sudden moment where I was like, oh shit, that's what it feels like. It was specifically talking about being in at the Comedy Works, where I was like, just imagining you on stage, and I just went chi, and I was just like, now
Yeah.
tell us everything. um, yeah,
Yeah.
you don't
Nah.
talk about that comedy stuff much. I realize in on this podcast, I feel like that's been one of
Like
the
what?
things, just like your general experience with it, because it's something that like I mean you don't do it much now, correct? If I'm
No,
unless I'm yeah.
like I switched mostly to poetry, and I haven't done much of that recently either.
Mm.
Like yeah, because I was supposed to release my poetry album. That is still coming. I'm gonna say it's coming this year. We have like six. I'd say so 6 months. We have a good amount of months.
We have
Um,
4 months left.
like I don't know, because I don't want to say four. 'Cause I think four would make me realize it's not a lot of time, but a good amount of months help me
Okay,
make you think it's more than four. Yeah, things like
you
that. I
have
slow
12
down.
months.
Exactly that. If I have that mindset, I can leave it. But like, yeah, like exactly that. Like, I need to. One, I don't want to focus on this show. Two, I want to add new poems to this thing. Three, every single day I write and I practice. Well, I don't really practice. I just write. I think of better poems and better things than what I originally wrote. Which means that like a lot of these, I think there's only three remaining like poetry tracks that were originally written like back in 2020, 2021. Everything else is like 2024, 2023. And I'm like, there's some work I'm purposely keeping away from the album itself because it doesn't really fit in what I want it to be. Primarily because I
Mhm.
don't know what I want it to be either. Like, I don't know. Like, I know what the name of it is. I've teased it. Oh wait, I think I've already said it on social media. Like the Happiness Project is its name. Like I don't need to go into why it's called that now, but the general like feeling of it is supposed to be a very loosely like a very non-linear like path to an idea of what happiness is and things like that. So a lot of it is discussions about why we're not there, why I'm not there, why you're not there, things like that, rather than these are poems I wrote. Have fun. So it's like and that's what I want to do with poetry. Do it where like albums mean something, so I can work with that creative side a lot more. Like I don't really plan on releasing books. I might release like one big book of like three different albums put together, maybe. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, like that's like creativity right now is a big plus I've noticed from. So I've taken like 45 hours to edit a 2.5 minute long clip from the anti-racist supercut. Yeah, the episode's doing like really well, like really, really well, surprisingly well. I think it's like doubled in one day. It doubled like the full episode's original viewership. That's on YouTube alone. Done well on other platforms as well. So that's a plus. Creative things are nice.
Yeah, I think genuinely that's one thing that out of us two is something I genuinely can't like comment on in the same way, because I don't have currently going on creative outlets like that right now. Like I have ideas for creative outlets going forward, but there's so much other shit I want to deal with in my life that the creative outlets are just are essentially going to end up being procrastination if I even get round to them, of other issues that I feel are more important. So it's like they're never not important, and I get it, but like, and they might even become a necessary thing going forward as I go back off YouTube again. But it's, I don't know, that's kind of a fascinating thing. I'll need to just explore that at some point, just
Well, let's
internally.
segue into. Well, I don't know where you want to start with, but I was going to say let's segue into YouTube.
Yeah, so I'm obviously this is a not an old message, I suppose. I mean, for me, it's fucking years, but it's an old. This is a discussion that obviously has come back a lot. The whole YouTube thing, and I don't think I made it super explicit. I realized Kez was saying this to me actually, and I was like, and he was like, "Oh, you didn't really quite explicitly tell me that you were watching YouTube again." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess I didn't like really explicitly say it. I gave hints of it, but I didn't like outright say, yeah, I stopped like being able to control myself again." It's one of those weird things that like, and again, this is also affected by the fact that a few weeks ago, I want to say a few weeks. I think it might be like 5 weeks ago now. It was like some time before I went on holiday. I had like a big uplift in my mood. If I don't even remember what episode it was I spoke about it, but there will be an episode where it's clear. And I and I, I've said this phrase before, but like when things are going well, everything feels easy. And in many ways, the YouTube then wasn't as big an issue at the time because I just felt better. But that's a complicated thing to kind of start to grasp. But one of the problems that comes with like sort of addictive stuff, especially, is that if you like, as long as you're just getting by enough, you can feel like sort of okay with what you're doing. Like you can feel okay with continuing in that space. But the problem is that in the end result of it is the end result of what that ends up looking like is that you're still stuck in the same cycle and you're still causing your own crises and issues through it. It's the self-defense mechanism that it will in theory be is still overly stagnating to your person and so on. So it's not worth engaging with. Now, as an explanation of why I'm even mentioning all of this, because why now in particular? Well, I very recently had the week that we not are in, but last week, which has no recording of the podcast, despite the fact that I was very adamant that we'd be back on track. Was a particularly
we weren't off track. We weren't off track because an episode did go up. So
yeah, but again, it doesn't. But like the recording, like when we've having done this now, like it even outside of it from what's being put out to the public and what they hear. Like if we didn't have the what do you call it, the supercar, then the time between the two, episode 23 and episode 24 would be very large. Like it would be big.
I think it would be like 2 weeks. I think.
Yeah, it would have missed a week, right? And even outside of that, it's still an aspect of creating a routine, or the idea of like having an active creative expression through the podcast or whatever. Even just the idea of chatting about my emotions and stuff. This is in some ways in some ways therapeutic. The reality is that last week I had a really big sort of what I called like I fell into a hole, and I can't describe the hole very well apart from sort of saying that it could weirdly, obviously it's weird to say that it's the worst I felt in ages, but like it's the worst I felt in a while. But that's like not really saying a lot, because even though I felt really horrible, when I really think back, like even to whenever it was I started feeling better, like 5 weeks ago or whatever, before that, I was feeling roughly the same quite regularly on a regular basis as I was in the hole last week. It's just last week it actually had a bit more context to it, which was kind of a bit more of an actual grieving process about my granddad dying. which I think definitely was a part of it because I had spoken to my mum more actively about it. But I think there was something else, and I think this is the truth statement of it, I guess, which is, and also like me and Kestis and you had been playing games for days in a row, and we were having fun. And in fact, I mean, that whole last week is so odd to me, and I'll get round to like you two kind of talking to me, trying to get in contact with me and things like that. But I just want to point out, like, it felt momentous in the moment, especially because I had been feeling a lot better. You know, I had moments of like, I had a really small moment of suicidal ideation, which, you know, the extent to what that means is kind of complicated. I don't want to like, it's not something that should be underplayed by any means, but also I want people to recognize, as a person who's has had that feeling in the past many years ago, but every single day and at a much higher intensity. It's I just want I guess I'm not trying to underplay, but I'm trying to say it's okay when I'm saying that is not like as bad as it sounds, right? Like I'm basically just trying to get across that even though it sounds bad, because it is, it's not as bad as it sounds. Like
it's a concerning thing to hear, but it's something that like you're in control of, and it's not a reason to be worried about for you.
Yeah, the weird thing is now, because of the journey I had been through well before this podcast even started, I have such an awareness sometimes about how I might not be able to get out of a hole, for example, like I will kind of fully describe in a bit. But but when I start analyzing back to it, there are moments where I can be like, okay, so how bad was that part of it? How bad was this part? How, was I doing this kind of thing? Was I doing that kind of thing? And the funny thing is that I have a way of kind of saying, okay, that wasn't good, but that's not that bad. Like, oh, I had suicidal ideation. How much did I have it? Very, very, very little. Okay, so I'm not there anymore. I'm not back to that place. It was just, but there was, for example, I described this to you last night. Like I had a more extended period in one particular day of like a feeling of worthlessness or whatever, like a feeling of despair. And this comes from like me wanting to find a new job. This comes from the fact that I was this comes from the fact that like in trying to this comes from the fact that my YouTube addiction was becoming like that. I was going back to a really, really strong YouTube addiction, and that was having a feedback loop. The fact that the fact that I'm also wanting to expand in some other ways, and I was letting myself down there, whether it just be like, cooking and looking after myself a bit more, or doing a bit more exercise or whatever. Like there's all these kind of things going on, which all feed into a sense of you're not doing what you should be doing. And that doesn't actually come out that way. The way it comes out is you can't do these things. And you don't even think about the fact that you can't do these things. This is subconscious. You can't do these things. And then the conscious thoughts that you're having are you are incapable of being the person that you want to be. Like you are incapable of being the person that other people can even want you to be. You're incapable of being a person who can be in society. Like, all these things, like, if this is going to keep happening to you every fucking, like, 2 weeks or whatever, what the fuck, like, what are you, like, what are you providing, and it's that sense of like self-worth, like really taking a dive. In our self-worth episode, I think I kind of described the idea of being a burden, that, like, that kind of feeling. So it's a so that part was complicated, but it was just the extent of time that it was, because it was about like 4 days. What was it? I think, when did I start talking again? It was Sunday, was it? Yeah,
like,
no.
You came, I think it was actually Saturday.
Saturday, yes, no, you were right. It was Saturday. It was on Saturday.
Yeah, and it was on Sunday when I actually spoke to you again, because I was outside. I was with Toga.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's.
No, I
No,
was talking
no,
about
no,
Sunday.
no. Sunday, it was Sunday because I decided to take the day off because I hadn't taken the day off previously. It was Sunday.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was Sunday.
it's 4 days anyway.
I think it was something like Tuesday. It was either Tuesday, Sunday, or Wednesday, or Sunday. I honestly can't remember, and it doesn't really matter. But it was an extended period of time. But what was interesting about the whole experience was you and Kez were regularly trying to contact me, which because of us interacting more recently, I think was the reason why it was like, oh, we were sort of expecting you, and you didn't turn up, right? And so we're calling you, but then you kept doing it, which I thought which in previous like I talked about how the way I felt then was similar to how I felt semi regularly, like quite not that long ago, right? And when I had those moments where I would be uncontactable or whatever, I'm not saying that you guys didn't worry, but there wasn't the same level of like poking, I guess, through like contact. And because of that period of contact time, um, it felt suddenly it felt like a much bigger thing, which is a very strange way of saying it, but like it felt more momentous that I wasn't contacting you back. I should also mention I was actually physically ill. I felt like quite physically ill randomly, and again, that's why I'm saying like it's kind of a weird fluke of a situation. And I do feel a lot better now, but I will go back to the point of talking about YouTube again now, because the problem is that when I get into negative situations, I don't interact with the kinds of things that I should interact with to actually get me through it properly. Both a mixture, for example, if you describe any of the things I describe and you'll see why that's true. If it was physical illness, for example, yeah, there's nothing wrong with like necessarily, just kind of like not interacting with people, not wanting to interact with people or whatever. But for example, like Kez isn't that far away. Like if I started feeling really, really bad, then if Kez knew about it, then Kez might be able to, interact with me in other ways, like related to that, whether it be like, coming by to say hi, or whether it be like to bring me something or whatever. Like in theory, that could happen, right? I'm not saying I'm not saying that's how it would play out, but let's just, let's go with the idea of let's go with the options that could produce the best outcome. In terms of like in terms of engaged, social, in terms of like grieving, for example, like, is it benefited for me to completely isolate myself from the people around me? And I should be clear, grieving is different for different people. But for me, grieving isn't a particularly like I should be isolated experience, or I don't think it is, because the times in my life where I've grieved the most is at a funeral, like as in, and like where it's the most effective, because I'm in a social situation around others, or like when my grandparents died when I was at home, and I would have my family around them. I've always found grieving to actually like for a death for a loved one who's died. I was about to say for a dead one, which is not quite the phrase, but still technically works. For a dead loved one or whatever. The grieving in that sense, I've always actually found quite enjoyable because it's very cathartic, and very much not like depression. For those who are wondering, it's nothing like depression, in my opinion, at least personally. Depression feels like a kind of a void and lack of and stagnation, and like grieving, or any sort of like cathartic expression of sadness is like having like it, your emotions flow from out of you. It's like literal change is happening and expression is occurring. So there's a very different like it is an emotional release, whereas with depression it's like an emotional build-up consistently, but it's an emotional build-up that's like a small pressure that also deflates itself. Like you can't, like it's such an awkward way to just try and describe these things, but like I don't know how to do it very well, but that's very different feeling. And so, you know, I feel even weirdly, I feel better about the whole experience now, and I don't think I'll grieve in the same way at this point. But it doesn't help me to do what I did, which was close off so much.
Yeah,
And
which is a thing that you do often, isn't it?
yeah, it's the avoidant thing, right? But the avoidant, but it's easy to be avoidant when you have something to turn to, right? Like you can't just be avoidant in the sense of just run away. You have to run away to something. There has to be something you're going towards. Because if I ran out into a field, right, oh, that's kind of a weird. The analogy is getting weird here, but just imagine for the sake of it, I was like, I'm feeling sad, and I'm just not going to interact, right? If I didn't have my phone and I didn't have the things that I was like relying upon, like to self-medicate in the way that I do, what would I do? Like it would be like I know what I've done in the past when I haven't relied on those things is I've called Kestis and wanted to go see him. I've always like tried to see if I could go see him that night, or like I might try and call you or call mum or something like that. Like, you know, there are situations in the past where that has happened, and I've been like, I need to call someone. I didn't do that, and in fact, what did I do? I ignored your calls, or I after the first day where I was just actually ill and then not feeling great the second day, but then it's unclear whether that's physical illness or otherwise. And then after that, it's not physical illness. Like it's mental block. And it's like, okay, this is getting away from me. But the only reason it can get away from me is because I actively have a way of not really processing specifically, but a way of like kind of, numbing the pain, like which how many times have you heard numbing the pain to mean like when we're talking about like these kind of more mental health situations, like there's so many examples of where that is truly like where the there's unforeseen consequences as a result of that down the road. Obviously, I understand the idea of numbing the pain to have reason. Painkillers aren't bad in and of themselves, but the idea, and that's the point. YouTube is not a bad thing. I want to keep. Maybe I haven't made this clear enough. YouTube is not a bad thing. Not insistently. I mean, innately. Innately, it's not innately bad. It's bad
Can
for
you
me.
do people a favor and myself a favor? Can
Yeah,
you
sure.
actually, because the only way I think people would know what you're talking about is if they listen to people. Can you describe your YouTube addiction and what it
Okay.
actually is?
Okay. I don't think describing it is that difficult in the sense that it says that if I said like I have a YouTube addiction, the only thing you have to know is I obviously the statistics of it is I watch it a lot, and it tends to, the kind, that moment that you probably most people have where you're scrolling on a feed for too long, and then you realize you pass way too much time, and you also realize that reading the news is making you a bit sad. Well, imagine if you were watching YouTube, but then you did it for 8 hours in a row or more, like on a day when you decided that when you woke up in the morning you wanted to do something productive that day. And imagine if every moment, like imagine if it reached the point as well where it was like, okay, I've gotten off my laptop where I was watching a YouTube video, and now because I need to go to the toilet because I have to, and so what does that mean? That means I have to get my phone, I have to put the YouTube video I was watching or a different one on, then have my headphones in, and then go in and then do that, and then come back to what I was doing for the next however long, many hours, not eating properly, not drinking properly. This has been years and years and years. I mean, it didn't start when I was when I was first when I first had depression, but it's probably, I mean, at this point, it's like 16 years old, I guess, at this point. Like the not the extent, because obviously YouTube, like being available to me in the same way, has not been as much, but YouTube addiction definitely has. I don't know how to explain it more beyond that. I suppose apart from just saying, like, imagine someone, being on YouTube for like over 70 hours a week, and just imagine how much that affects the general running of their life, right? And think about how that affects like your capacity to sort of get other shit done. And it truly, when I say like it's an avoidant thing, it's like, yeah, it's the place I sequester to. It's my comfort blanket, but it's my comfort blanket that has its benefits in terms of it being something that gives me, that can make me feel not as bad. It can kind of make, and again, this is all about like avoiding the voices in your head kind of deal. But now it's kind of reached a point where it's not even so much an avoid the voices in my head, and now it's sometimes even bring the voices into my head because it makes my life miserable, and then that's when the voices start coming in. It becomes, there's a much more, it's a more parasitical cycle essentially. And I always like to describe my YouTube addiction now in terms of thinking about how I have learned to understand alcoholics and alcohol addiction, because a lot of the terminology and a lot of the ideas within it I can really pinpoint and identify with the YouTube addiction, including what I was going to say, which was that if you're just because it's bad for me doesn't mean I'm saying it's bad in general, because there are people who are alcoholics who certainly at many points in history would have had people like, if they said, oh no, I won't drink tonight, how many people around them would be like, oh, go on, like, or whatever, because they just don't understand what the idea of being an alcoholic is. Like, because for them it's not bad, it's not causing that pain and suffering, but for them it is. And I'm trying to, and it's the same thing with, I mean, we're now realizing more broadly that this is a thing, but there are lots of people who still feel, and rightly so for them personal selves, that it's not a bad thing, because it probably isn't. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to make an argument. We could have a longer discussion or a more creative discussion about how bad is it, and talk about, well, was TV as bad as YouTube? Is there a distinct difference? Is this just like a thing at the time? Is this just like technology rolling forward? We always had this happen. Is TikTok the new internet, basically? Like, discussion for our generation of the same thing that we went through. Is people talking about games when we were growing up the same shit that we're talking about now? Like, that's a whole other conversation. But what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to say is, and to be honest, I don't know actually what I would say for it. I think I'm quite clueless to the fullest extent of it. I'd have to really try to come up with a full argument, because I think it is unclear. But that's, again, but I'm like, I don't care. I'm not making a moral statement about YouTube. I'm making a statement about how I relate to it and how it affects me. So I'm back on the wagon of not doing it. And I should, again, for the period of time that this was happening, it was just my binge. I just used it, and it was literally not letting me go, and it was making me waste time in my life and making people worry for me. I mean, I'm not saying you were never worried in the past, but it became very clear because you both contacted me on multiple days, and eventually Kester's messaged my mum and was like, "Oh, have you heard from him recently?" And because there was a message that I felt I needed to react to a bit more urgently, related to funeral-based stuff, in October, I was like, "Oh yeah, I need to." Or not October, September. Oh no, maybe it was October. Yeah, sorry, it is October actually. Holy shit. I think so. I'm going to check this afterwards, but I'm almost certain, because the whole point is that one of us can't make it in September, so we have to do it in October. Anyway, not like a normal funeral. This is like with the ashes and stuff. They would have already been cremated previously. But the scrub back. The but because of that, I did message the family chat, like a single message, just saying it's all good with me, basically. And so my mum said to Kez, like, yeah, no, he did react or whatever. And then she called me on Sunday, on a day, actually. I don't remember if it was Sunday, but either way, how dare you? How dare you make that note? But she tried calling me, and like I think it was Saturday evening, and I managed to miss it the first time, and then I thought, okay. But then I waited for a message, but I noticed there was no message sent. And I actually thought at that point, oh, did Kessa's actually like get in contact with her? And I was like, that can't be. I was just like, that can't be the case. And then it turned out it was. Which I want to be clear. I'm actually quite happy that you did it. Like that there was this combined effort, because not because I want the attention or I liked it really, but because I think it did help jostle me at some points to be a bit more like, okay, this is going to be like, I've now built up in my mind that I've done something wrong, and so now this is going to feel, it's going to be hard to convince myself to like message you back and be like, oh, sorry guys, but like I even like. But then I thought but then I managed, because I'm in generally a better mood, like, because I have been feeling a lot better recently, I was actually able to kind of cut that off slightly and go, well, they have been calling you. They have just been wanting to like know how you are and things like that. They know, like Alex and Kez both know that this is a thing, and they know who you are, and, they understand. They're not going to be, horrible about it. And something I made myself do, which I don't know, I genuinely don't know, but I never apologized, even though like, and I made myself not do that because I realize how much I apologize for things generically that I realize I shouldn't. This isn't necessarily a situation in which I'm saying I shouldn't, but I said, you know what, I think I need to work on that, because I think I need to recognize that I'm apologizing for things on like very often when there's nothing to apologize for. And sort of just like a part of the whole me trying to like, better myself in general, like this just kind of like occurred to me. And it's things like that. That's the kind of self-analysis that is what makes me better, like feel better mentally and as a person, right? It's quite a strong, it's really the way I have managed to get to where I am, like that level of impersonal, sort of, like impersonal kind of like analysis of myself without, with no judgment, essentially. Like that's not a good thing, but I don't like, but like it's. How can I say something is a bad thing but not judge? What I mean is that there's no emotional judgment. Right, there's no like, oh, I now feel bad as a result of it. Like those moments where I manage to feel like I'm thinking rationally or whatever, which obviously is not possible for me to determine. So talking about it with you guys and in general is a necessary step in that process. But that feeling that I have is one of the ways in which I truly get to kind of decompress a lot of that, and that I truly get to kind of map out to myself what it is I want to change. And more importantly, I should say, I don't want to change in that I just want to change who I am as a person. What I want to do is I want to deal with the things that are obviously bothering me. That's kind of the right way of saying it. But what that ends up being is that ends up changing me in the process, because these things are, I've said this before, think like habits or just things that affect you become who you are. You are this person now. So changing who you are isn't me changing my personality. It's not changing like some core identity element. It's me going, this is something this is an external thing to you, and you have internalized it. Do you want to internalize that anymore? No. Okay. So how do we deal with that? And obviously I've never been as eloquent as that with myself, and I've never been able to, and there are many, many years where I was making progress without really any sort of control over it. It was chaotic, fucking chaotic. But like, if you feel like, if you're listening to what I'm saying and you're like, this sounds very like, you know what you're doing, understand that this is me in my best moment explaining something that I have tried doing for years and still haven't really succeeded at. Like, like I don't have like a way to like, and in part because ultimately it takes time. There's so much of the experience of this has nothing to do with even how you do it, It's the time that you take in doing it. Which is a somewhat element of effort, which unfortunately is something that a poor mental health ends up sapping from you, is effort. I think that's one of the that's why I like to think of it in this very parasitical way, because it's not just that it exists, it's the fact that it works to make it harder for you to deal with it. As long as you keep living, it's all good, right? But you can still feel that way. I was about to sudden very strong allusion to suicide there, but the idea of that, but that then becomes almost the mind thought of this is so bad, this needs to end now. That feels like the only thing that you can do, because this parasite is so deeply wormed in with it, within your consciousness and so on. Not recommending it, just I want to point out that that's literally that literally makes sense within that idea, within the analogy. So yeah, it's I don't know if I ever not more I think that maybe I'll come back to this at some point and have more to kind of glean from it in particular. And I'd be curious to hear what people actually have to say on on the matter. We have an email, which I don't. Is it just called the Silly Whales at Gmail? Is that what it's called?
It's called Silly Whales Pod, P-O-D.
Silly Whales Pod, yeah. Silly Whales Pod at gmail.com. Yeah, so if there's anything you want to send there, go for it. I'd like to hear, but including all of Alex's controversial takes about football. But this is one of those interesting cases where I'm in such a good place. Ultimately, in big picture talk, I am in a very good place. But I also know that the place I'm at is kind of has weak foundations in terms of, as shown by this kind of fall, where I don't have any problem with having a bad day once in a while or having a bad week. It's the way that I kept staying in that bad week, and I know that I could have gotten out of it much quicker and much more comfortably and much more organically if I didn't have these habits and behaviors I have to that prop myself up with these methods of escapism from my own life, let alone the quote unquote problems I have, which then causes more problems I think than I initially had. It's the problem of avoidant personality, that something might scare you, but just because something scares you doesn't mean that where you're running away to is better than where you were or where you were running to initially, or where you were when you got scared. Because there's lots of things that scare you that in reality aren't that scary, but regardless, you go back to a shitty place and you're not scared of that because there's nothing new there. It's stagnant, it's old, it's bad, it's not fun, but it's not anything you have to worry about. It's comfortable.
It's there.
Yeah, that's the issue of avoidant personality, or the idea of avoidance in general, and you actually prevent yourself from growing in a way because you don't get to experience the fear and know what it's actually like, and then modulate accordingly. And it means that so many things that look the same but really aren't, you don't get to learn what the difference is, because every time you just ran away rather than experiencing each of them individually and making value judgments of them afterwards. So I really am curious what people have to, if people have any ideas on this, and this is probably, and this is definitely the worst I felt in a bit, and that I imagine that comes across with the way that I'm giving it this gravitas. I genuinely, I felt bad with the riots, with the the fucking neo-Nazis, but that was not an internal strife. That was a genuine, that was essentially a cathartic recognition. That was I'm sick of this and it's annoying me, but I'm glad. But me speaking about it feels like the right thing to do because it's bad. Versus, the speaking of it in my head that I experienced last week was not a good cathartic experience of anything. This is a more cathartic experience in this moment talking about it, because I'm getting ideas off my chest, and off my chest. Maybe some things I hadn't considered up until I started talking, and then it just started to come out. So yeah, that's my piece for this particular episode. This was I didn't know how meaty it was going to be. It was decent. It wasn't overly meaty, but it was all right.
Yeah. I had something in my head. Like, I wanted to discuss it. Oh, yeah, I'm an uncle. Funny. Yeah, I have.
Hey.
And it got me really sad. It actually got me being like, you know what? Like, because like I'm very much like I hate it because like I'm from a single family background, as they'll call it, but it's one of them things where it's not been that has affected my life at all. People love to argue me back and forth and say that it has. It hasn't. You can't miss what you never had, especially that you can't miss what you've never had to yearn for either. So I didn't grow up with that presence. I mean, I'm not ever missing that presence. But there are definitely like some periods where like I might see a father and son and go, like I wonder what that feels. But it's never a situation where like I wish I had that, because I genuinely can't wish for something that I've never had any concept of experiencing.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a lot of people I love a good argument on, because it's always links back to people's insecurities being projected onto me. Like, oh, well, every boy needs a dad. Says who? Like, says who?
You're a good dartboard, I think. I think people genuinely find you a good dartboard for that. I don't know why, but people do.
Don't know what that means.
As in, like, the projecting onto you thing. I think people do it a lot. And for some reason, I think something about you, I think, just makes people want to, which I don't understand why.
Yeah, because you've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot. I've seen it quite a few times.
Yeah. I think it's like, I think it's a mixture. Like, it seems to always happen when I am either doing something good in front of people, or when I'm like quieter. Like, people have to go, hey, I can have a dig at him because, it's either
you just attract the loud people.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. So it's like, and then it never really works out in their favor because I'm fairly non-compliant in it. I don't rise to it. I'm kind of just a bit like, what are you doing, bro? Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, yeah. But yeah, like that, those discussions come up as well. I was just like, okay, cool. I'm thinking about it more on like how we view our family. Like, what's the thing? Families are family. We can only cater for and do what we can with the tools that we've been dealt. So if you want to make a point and be like, hey, you think that every family needs to have a dad and a mum, then you have to make that point with some conviction as more than just, but that's just the way it is, because that isn't how. And you also have to come in with like something beneficial to back it up, because nothing signifies that being the case, like needing two parents, aside from just a financial implication. That's all it is. It's nothing to do with, like single family parents are this. And no. It's more just like, quite simply put, give that family the same resources as a two income family, and it's just as good and just as fine. Like, parenting situations are down to parenting skill. A bad parent really raise a fairly bad child. A good parent really raise a fairly good child, But sometimes you just roll the dice, she heads all. But yeah, so I was thinking about that, like, brother to father, and say, okay, look at that, like, that's cool, and like, it'll be really weird because like that is a reality now in a way, and it's also I don't think that I'm going to be involved in this kid's life much anyway, just by proxy of distance and time. But it's like, you got to start thinking about yourself. Oh, what about kids for you? I'm like, I don't see that in my future. I think that's a lot. It's a hard sell, It's a really hard sell.
Yeah, to be fair, with the whole like being in a kid's life as well, that partly comes down to your brother, like how much is he going to try and like get in contact with you and want you to come by and stuff. It's
I mean,
it's ac-
from
it,
my
it's
point of
actually
view to the baby, it's more like that's how I'm viewing. Like,
yeah.
it's not even like what to do with my brother, more to do with me. Like, where would I get the time? I don't see myself making the time. Like, unless it's like a situation where it aligns perfect. Like, I don't see myself needing to go out of my way to see the child. If that makes sense. It sounds awful, but it's more just like I know they're there. Like, you know.
I get you. It's I mean I'm an uncle of two, so it's and you know in I guess because I grew up with you've met some of the kids I grew up with. They're essentially my brothers and stuff like that. Like it's that were much younger. Like it's I guess I've gotten used to the idea of being in their lives generally, especially when they have lived at least in London. Um, but and one of the things I felt bad about with my, the eldest niece is that I don't know if I've actually said her name, so I'm just not going to. Um, is that I felt like I wish I could have been around more during certain parts of her life, both because I went to uni, like, I was away at uni for most of her life, basically, but also just like making sure I came down more often. And when I was down, well, anytime I was down, at least, because to be fair, I was kind of broke, so I couldn't come down very often. But when I was down, like going to see them more and interacting with them more, because now I see her now, and I had time with her when I came back from holiday, and I specifically went there because I want to see her as well as my newest niece, um, the most recent bun that was cooked,
Jesus Christ.
and I don't. I also fucked up the metaphor kind of, but you know what I mean, like because I'll bun in the oven thing. But yeah, she's very sweet, and very smart. So.
Jesus Christ.
You just have to say this shit. But I went to see them both, but like I really wanted to speak to the eldest, and I actually had a really good time with her, and actually got to kind of chat about stuff that I wasn't necessarily expecting her to talk about with me, about her life and how she feels about certain things and everything. And because she's going to secondary school soon, this is her last year at primary, and it's like, and I was genuinely so happy with the conversation because it felt like she was so trusting of me, and I didn't have to ask about anything. She just gave it all to me, and I was like, great. Like I was so happy. But that's like what I'm trying to say is just like I don't know how it will feel for you, and I don't know what your experience is with in that particular way, because obviously you've had loads of experience with looking after kids, but in the
Yeah.
specific avenue of this, I don't know the experience you've had with like the feeling of a commitment to a specific child because of a family thing or whatever, or
Yeah, I
however
just
you
don't
think of
think
it.
I'm gonna be utilized as an uncle in that way ever. So I don't like. That's why I'm not like really worried or concerned about it in any way, shape, or form. So I know
That's
I'm never
fair.
gonna have to I'll never have to look after this child. Like there's no pressure on me to see the thing, the thing. Like
Yeah, I mean you
like
don't know them, so yeah.
also what hit me more was this. When I'm 37, that kid will be 10. Like that's ridiculous to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start to think about where everyone else will be when I'm 37. So I realized like a lot of people I play football with will be in their mid to late 40s. Like a lot of my friends who are older will be approaching the 50s or
I
like
always
late
like
40s.
I always like to think about either 18 or the age I am now, like what that would mean, like how old I would be when they reach my age. Like my youngest niece is gonna be what I'm gonna be like 55 when she's my age. Like that's nuts. That's a lot. That's
Yeah.
that's old. Like we're way past. Like we've skipped past the 40s, and by the time she's 18, even I'm gonna be what, like 45.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna be close to my 50s. Like you know,
I don't know what I don't see myself. I don't see myself I didn't see myself getting past the age 24 to be honest. So this is all borrowed time.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so I can't imagine myself like age 30, let alone age 35, 40.
I know, and it's not going to feel like that when we're there either. Like that's just the reality of it. You're never going to feel like the age you've reached to. I think.
Yeah, like I just.
I did literally think like, oh shit, like by the time I'm 40, okay, how many years have I got? And I'm like, 12 years. Like, fuck me. That's a long time. That's a lot of years that I've got a while away. And I know people talk about like how life is short. It's not. It's long as fuck. Like I get why people say it, but they're just wrong. Like especially if you're someone like me, or probably someone like us, because I think you're the same, where it's just like where there's a certain agony to living that you feel, where it's like this is a long process. Like I want to kind of get to points more so than be waiting around for as long as I am. Obviously I want to improve the quality of my life, etc., so that it doesn't, so that that feeling is actually shortened. Perspective and retrospective time and all of that nonsense. But anyway, that's the but yeah, it's amazing when you start thinking about like what the age differences and things like that.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have anything else to say. Actually, I think I'm
done. Yeah. Sorry, that just reminded me. The other thing I think about is I think about how long will it be until I was the same age that my mum had me, and how long will it be until I'm the same age to when my dad had me? And it's like, oh, so I've only got. So you're saying that if I have a kid in 3 years from now, I'll be the same as my mum. And it's like, okay, well, I guess either expect me to have a kid within the next 3 years, or expect me to have a kid in the next 12 years, like because my dad was like 39 or whatever. So those are the two goalposts I've got to. I'm like, yeah, I mean, if I have a kid in between those, I'm happy, I'm fine, whatever, it's okay. But I can imagine other people where it's like, oh yeah, my mum had me when I was 23. God, what was I like when I was 23? Jesus, you know what I mean? Like that kind of process that I know people have had. So yeah, I'm done. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, that all being said, we're going to take 2 steps to the rear and get out of here. We're going to win Survivor Game. We're in the win. See ya.
Survivor Games. Didn't say Hunger Games correctly.
Oh, great, yeah. I think I got the WWE event Survivor Series in my head.
Oh, right.
We're going to win Hunger Games. Yeah, there we go. Fix it. Fuck you guys.
Oh, I love you so much. Love you.
I have to go all the way back up to stop recording. There we go. Toga!
Oh, wait.